Welcome to another episode of SQUPCAST. Some automation running in the background that I'd completely forgotten about. Had started it without us being prepared, so we'll just jump straight in. I'm Adam. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Dave is on the episode with us today. Hey, Dave.
Hey, folks. How we doing?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, Dave, seeing as it's your first time on?
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks. So I'm one of the product managers here at SquaredUp. I've been here for a long time, kind of working on dashboard server back in the early days and working in a kind of more technical role, but all things product these days. And mostly my focus is everything kind of data visualization and dashboards. So yeah, we've got a couple of cool bits to show you today and some sneak peeks of features coming up and so on.
Great. So we'll start with some little fun bits, and then we'll jump into the not so fun bit, the topic of today, sales made me do it. So yeah, today we're going to basically walk through the typical sort of first day for a new user with SquaredUp, from signing up and some bits around that to setting up your first plugin, inviting users, playing around with some cool features. It should be enough to get anybody started. If you're hesitant about jumping in without any support, this episode should help you do that. So Dave, why don't we just start with some fun, interesting bits and pieces from the product team?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me share screen. Here we go. Hopefully we're seeing that. So yeah, there's a couple of bits I kind of want to show off today, a couple of features that we've released, but maybe have kind of gone under the radar, which are smaller features. So yeah, I thought I'd highlight those. And then there's also a preview of an upcoming feature that I want to do as well. It's a real sneak peek. It's very kind of early stage development, but I wanted to kind of share that. But let's take a look first at copying data from tiles. So sometimes it's useful to get data out of SquaredUp. You've got dashboards and your team love them and use them, but perhaps you want to kind of generate an offline report, or you want to do some kind of deeper dive analysis, whatever it might be. So if you come into SquaredUp and hover on any tile, within the ... menu, we've added this copy data button, and that copies all of the data within this tile, the kind of raw data, so all columns, all rows, directly to your clipboard, which then means you can go to your favorite tool, whatever that might be, Excel, Google Drive, Notion, SharePoint, and just paste it directly in. So let's try that on this tile. So if I copy that, and I'll come over to spreadsheet here and paste that in. So you can see we get the raw data, so I can see all the amounts to a million decimal places and dates and so on. And obviously whatever tool you're using, maybe you want to just generate a chart for that. So we can just say donut and off you go. So super easy to kind of get data out of SquaredUp using that, and works with any tile. So I could do line graph data, text, health, whatever it might be. So yeah, like I say, just a small feature, just a kind of quality of life one, just to help you if you are trying to share that more externally.
Nice. What's the I mean, I guess the first thing that came to mind for me there was sort of, I have to save an Excel sheet monthly for, reporting reasons or whatever. That's
yeah, exactly that. Like we worked with one customer where I think it was the boss or somebody like that wanted a report kind of sent to them regularly. They didn't want kind of the open access dashboard. They just wanted it kind of archived, so they could take those exports. There's obviously a couple of ways to get that data out. You can export the whole dashboard as an image, or individual tiles as an image, but having that data just as the kind of raw data there makes it a bit more accessible if you want to kind of do some more analysis or trend forecasting and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Brilliant. All right.
What's next?
Next up is a feature I know you love, Adam, which is custom palettes. So we get a few requests for kind of custom colors on our charts for all sorts of wonderful use cases. I think you use it on your solar generation dashboard?
I do, yeah. Nice bright yellows.
Bright yellows for the sun, and I guess like red green for energy saved versus energy bought, and so on, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm sure you can imagine lots of different use cases for this. I mean, sometimes you just want to see colors of incidence, high being orange, critical being red, and so on. Here we've got our car colors, Ford in the lovely blue, Ferrari in red there, and so on. So super easy to kind of customize these colors. It's JSON only today, so we typically ship some features like this as JSON only first. That lets us just get some feedback, and at a later point we'll probably deliver some UI on this feature just to make it a bit easier. But I thought this was the perfect setting just to demo something like this. So if you're listening, you're probably one of the few out there that will know how to do this. So if I edit a tile, let's take this line chart and come into ... and edit JSON. That's our tile JSON editor. You can see we've got this palette option here. So under visualization and config, and we add that palette. And there's two ways of specifying the palette. You can specify it as an array, so just a list of colors like we've got here, and the chart will just walk through those colors as it needs. Or if I take a look at one of those other tiles, let's take a look at this one. You can see we've got the palette down here, and it's actually more of a mapping. So Ferrari is mapped to that particular hex code, and you can use hex codes, or you can just use kind of HTML color names as well. So super easy just to kind of come in, add those codes, add those names, and just give your dashboard a bit more kind of pop if there's certain colors that are going to make sense to the viewers of that dashboard.
Nice. So UI coming soon. Well, we have that in dashboard server, but yeah, fresh new for cloud. So yeah, contact support if you want any help with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, JSON only, so a little more technical today, but I imagine we'll ship some UI at some point soon as well. Yeah.
Great.
All right, so two little previews. Like I say, both of those are available now. What I want to show you next is an upcoming feature. So it's something we're building internally. Like I say, if it does kind of pique your interest or looks kind of relevant for a use case you've got, do drop me a line. We'll probably run a kind of private preview just before we release this more generally. But it's quite early stage at the moment. But drop me a line and kind of share your thoughts and feedback, and we can get you lined up for the beta. So. Let me jump over to this tab. So this is a dashboard. It's an overview of a Lambda, and typically with dashboards like this, you build them with a very fixed kind of scope or target. So here we've got a particular service, but for the eagle-eyed among you, I've actually got this drop down at the top here. So this is a feature we're calling dashboard variables, and it's the idea that you can change the kind of target for your dashboard just on the fly. You don't need to be an editor. You don't need to edit the dashboard kind of permanently and save it, and you don't need to build 10 dashboards for your 10 different lambdas or pipelines or applications, whatever it might be. So I can come in and just pick a different lambda. So if I want to see account service, I'll pick that, and the tiles will know to kind of go and fetch that data kind of in the context of that service. So pretty kind of simple use case. Maybe this is lambdas. Build runs is another one. You want to just see the data in the context of a different pipeline. So I can come in here. So for that to load. No data for that one. That's fun. Let's take one of those and just switch that data on the fly. So you build more of a kind of template dashboard, if you like, and then just can use that across all of your different objects.
Nice. So we're, at the moment, your drop down there is a scope of objects. Are there any other ways you can use those variables?
Yeah, good question. In this kind of early version, we're focusing just on scoped objects, and we obviously have the kind of magic power of the knowledge graph and the map behind the scenes, so you can just pick and choose objects. In the future, I think we'll look to extend it with text variables that you can kind of put into queries or use as a filter on a particular operation. So you can imagine a SQL query that suddenly becomes like parameterized with a variable here. So yeah, some super cool use cases. I think it opens up, and there's lots more that this kind of enables later down the line for us as well. So yeah, do let me know if you're interested in kind of giving it a go once we're at that kind of private preview stage, and we can chat and go from there.
Nice. How do people get in touch?
Email, LinkedIn, whatever works. Hit support@squaredup.com, and they'll route you through to me probably.
Yeah.
Otherwise, directly on LinkedIn works too.
Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, there's some great features. I think we said in the first episode, the power of color is very important in storytelling. I think it's equally sort of vital in a good dashboard. People know what red, amber, green means, but yeah, what if you're not trying to show health state, that kind of stuff. So the color stuff's great, and I think dashboard variables are massively powerful for simplifying. Build once, works for everything kind of situation. Yeah, really cool to see. Is there anything else you wanted to share, or should we jump into quick.
Yeah, I think that's it for kind of previews and sneak peeks. Obviously, there's plenty more coming. I wanted to highlight actually one resource, which is our kind of changelog, where we do publish new features and kind of shout about stuff. So do check out feedback.squaredup.com. There's a changelog live there with anything kind of new we add or updates. So if you're always kind of wanting to know what's new and coming, check that changelog out or listen to this podcast as well.
Nice. Okay, well, let's jump into a demo. Let me just share my screen 1 second. I wish this was always easier instead of everybody having to announce that they're going to start sharing their screen all of a sudden. Bear me just 1 second. Let's just go for that one. That should do it. So we're going to walk through just the typical steps that a new user goes through when they first sign up for SquaredUp. I've missed the first step. You're probably on SquaredUp.com and clicked sign up in the top corner, and you'll have arrived on a page like this. I think the first thing we're sort of highlighting is just recently we added this ability to pick a region. So this is effectively down to where we store your tenant configuration, which region we store your knowledge graph in, the version of our app, the region of our app that you're actually accessing. So for European customers, if you have concerns around GDPR or anything like that, we have European hosted instance of the app. And for everyone else, for the US especially, we have a US version. So the default is US, but if you do want to pick Europe, you can do that sort of right from this page. I guess the next thing to call out, I'm on the wrong page actually, I should go sign up now. The options that we currently support for sort of free signups, we have single sign-on available through Microsoft accounts or Google accounts. Or if you want to just bring your own username and password, you can choose email, enter your email address. We'll send you a verification code just to prove it's you, and then you can choose a password, and that's a password just to log into SquaredUp. So I think in this case, just to keep life, let's call it kind of simple, we'll go for Microsoft. And I will sign in with my SquaredUp account. It's going to ask me for my password, which is saved. Security team, please don't be paying any attention to that. So again, this is all like Azure Auth, right? It's going through all the same steps it would go through in any case where you're logging into a service with your Microsoft account. I'm having to open up my Authenticator app on my phone and enter 55 just to prove it's me. And it is, so it's going to let me in. Now, this is my first time logging into our EU region app. Oh, maybe it's not. Let me just change organizations quickly. Oh, God damn it. I've absolutely ruined the demo right at the start. I didn't realize I had access to something on here already. Dave, I think you've got a fresh tenant on EU, don't you? Let's, in true live webinar style, let's just swap over, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you clearly can make enough sacrifices to the demo graph today.
That did actually highlight something that's kind of interesting, that's really not obvious to people when they first sign up for SquaredUp, is that the organization that we create for you is for you, right? You're the person who's signed up. But companies, if they are particularly large or they need sort of large amounts of segregation between their data, you can have multiple tenants and access to multiple tenants. And that page that came up for me there completely unexpectedly lets you switch between the different organizations that you have access to. So you're able to basically switch between, your personal tenant that only you have access to, maybe the executive team have a tenant, the sales department has a tenant. It can be all entirely segregated at a very, very sort of high level, very, very sort of big boundaries between things, even in different regions, right? You can switch between regions depending on where you're working. So having saved the day, thanks, Dave. Dave's now sharing his screen, and this is a brand new tenant that somebody would see when they signed up. So I think that the first thing that we want people to do when they get in is to connect their own data, because there's nothing better for sort of highlighting the power of the dashboards you can build than if everything's contextual. We do have a sample data plugin though that just generates sort of fake data that looks a little bit like monitoring data or service desk data, that kind of thing. So there is an easy way to sort of get started. But why don't you just give us a quick explainer of sort of where we are at the moment, Dave?
Sounds good. So I've come in and this is my new tenant, and I have this workspace called My Team. And like Adam says, it's blank. There's no dashboards. There's no data sources. But it is important to know kind of everything lives within these workspaces, and those are kind of your building blocks for some of the more powerful features around kind of roll up and status views and so on, which I think we'll kind of show towards the end. But yeah, let's have a look at kind of adding that data source. So if I hit add data source, you'll get to our kind of catalog of all the different sources. So I've got a bunch here, just all sorts of stuff, cloud, on-prem data sources. So we do have our relay, which lets you kind of talk to on-prem tools like SolarWinds or DevOps TFS, whatever it might be. But let's add a DevOps instance. So if I add that in, you're typically prompted for kind of a few details. Some plugins have kind of interactive sign-on. So actually, if I just back out of here, take a look at Azure, for example, you can choose just to sign in with Microsoft, and we'll kind of take your permissions and go from there. Or you can enter kind of explicit credentials, and then you obviously have more kind of fine-grained control over what we can see and read-only access and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's take Azure DevOps. So for this, I have to enter my organization name, which is SquaredUp, and add a personal access token API key. Obviously, when you create this key, you can set the kind of permissions on which projects it can see, whether it's got read-only, write-only access. And for all of our data sources, we only ever kind of require read-only access. We're just kind of reading that data into our dashboards, kind of showing that on demand.
Just worth saying, because Azure DevOps is one of our sort of more popular plugins. The organization name is typically the slug that you'd see in the URL when you log into Azure DevOps. So if your organization's called, Contoso Inc., it's not going to be that sort of plain text, sort of friendly cased word. It's going to be what you see in the URL when you're in Azure DevOps. And you just mentioned permissions there. Supporting granular permissions. It's worth noting as well that you can just head over to docs.squareup.com, and there's articles for pretty much every plugin that will explain the minimum permissions we need for certain features to work, that kind of stuff. So docs are a great place to start if you do get stuck.
Brilliant. So I'll paste that token in. There's a couple of options here. I could restrict the data source for certain audiences and so on, and by default we'll install those sample dashboards. So most plugins have a few kind of samples to help you get started or give you some inspiration. So we'll leave that ticked, and we can take a look at those as well.
Just while it's sort of going through these first steps, just worth saying on the access control, that very much ties into workspaces, right? So we kind of expect in larger environments, you would have workspaces restricted by user. And in this case here, you can restrict the data sources to certain users, to certain workspaces, that kind of thing. So you could add this plugin, but you're the only person who can determine which workspaces are allowed to use that data.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we typically see people creating workspaces maybe for individual teams or individual applications, so then they can control those permissions and all of that kind of roll up that I mentioned.
Nice. So what's going on here?
Yeah, good question. So there's kind of three steps that we've done, and hopefully one of the things you noticed, it was actually pretty quick, and that's because SquaredUp does things a little bit differently to kind of most folk in this space, in that we don't store any of your data. So we've taken a kind of quick index of projects and pipelines and things like that, but all of your kind of data on your dashboards is just streamed kind of in real time as you're browsing those dashboards and looking around. So the actual kind of setup and connection is super lightweight. We obviously store those kind of credentials securely, test it works, add a few things out of the box, like I say, those sample dashboards, and do that kind of lightweight indexing of your environment. So super easy to get started. And
you mentioned the sort of knowledge graph when we were talking about dashboard variables and building scopes around your objects. So in that exact demo where you were showing sort of build pipelines, that list exists because the data source has asked ADO what pipelines do you have, right? And it gives you then a list of objects that we have a representation of.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of lets us do a few cool things. So you can search across your entire IT estate. It's going to search if you've connected AWS and Google and Azure, you're going to search across all of those tools just really quickly and easily. And you can drill down then into those objects. So we'll show that as well.
Cool.
let's dive in. So
Yeah.
I'll hit explore dashboards here, and we'll get taken to some of the kind of sample dashboards that you get out of the box. So there's 5 with this plugin, so overviews of pipelines, repositories, work items, and so on. So you can just see, straight away, hopefully some useful data and your data. So like I said, this is all kind of being streamed in real time. I can edit these tiles. I can customize, which pipeline we're showing. In this case, I think we just pick one automatically, and you can kind of dive in and edit that yourself. So you can probably see where dashboard variables, would come in useful here, because you just have a drop down on the top. So yeah, do look out for that one when it's available. What else we got here? Trends around pipelines. So build success rates. This doesn't look like the healthiest pipeline around. We've got the data there. Recent releases and so on. Not much happening. Some PRs and other bits and pieces. So some sample stuff, and hopefully just gives you a kind of kickstarter of what you might want to build, or what you're trying to get kind of going out of the box. But what I wanted to show you is our dashboard designer, so how you can build your own dashboard, and just kind of how easy that is.
Just before you do that, it's probably just worth saying, like, you just experienced there exactly what a lot of people find. Like, we don't know which pipeline you care about the most. So these out-of-box dashboards are always supposed to help sort of, what's that term we love internally? The art of the possible, right? This should show you what you could have, what your dashboard could look like, what the tiles look like. But these out-of-box dashboards ultimately, clone them, tweak them, just modify this one directly. But then, yeah, like you say, when dashboard variables comes in, you'll just pick the one you want from the top, and the whole dashboard will change dynamically.
Yeah, and there's lots of kind of controls to help you do that. So you can copy individual tiles around. So if there's something that's like, oh yeah, that's the tile I want, you can copy that to a brand new dashboard, or add it to an existing dashboard, and so on. So super easy to kind of pick a mix, and take the bits that look good and kind of what you were looking for. Yeah, absolutely. Let's create a new dashboard on this one. So we'll just do a couple of basic kind of ADO tiles just to see how that works. So you've got a few options. You can add images, you can add text to your dashboards, which is sometimes just great for kind of customization, or maybe even help text if you're kind of publishing dashboards out, maybe to service desk teams that just need some additional info or context to kind of what it is. But most of the magic happens kind of within the data option here. So if I click that, we'll get a list of what we call data streams. So these are these kind of live data being streamed from ADO as you're kind of viewing that dashboard. So let's take a look at something like build runs. I'll pull that in. So you'll pick that data stream, and then SquaredUp kind of knows what that applies to. And because we've indexed all your pipelines and your folders, we can just immediately show you a list of all of that stuff. So I can take SquaredUp Cloud pipeline here, just a demo one, and very quickly get that data back. So I can see a whole bunch of recent build runs here. You can then customize the visualization. Maybe you want to see kind of status blocks. Did those builds pass or not? Maybe you want to see a line graph of builds, maybe over time, or gauge, or scalar, whatever it might be. Tons of ways to kind of visualize that data.
Within each of those visualizations as well, like the bar graph there, for example, has defaulted, I guess, to picking the amount of time it took for that.
Yeah, run duration for each one.
But if there are multiple metrics in that base data, you can customize this. You can tweak it. There's all sorts of ways that you can configure it. It's not just a simple pick the visualization. There's quite a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll always try our best to kind of pick the right thing, but sometimes, when there's multiple kind of values there, you've got to tweak that just to get it fine tuned. And obviously, you can spend a bit of time kind of configuring the actual visualization. So maybe you actually want a horizontal. Oh, let's not do that. Apparently, that didn't work. A horizontal bar chart, or different labels, or grid lines, whatever it might be. So you should be able to kind of configure that to your heart's content as well.
I know it's over on the left. There's a time frame panel. That's sort of the next one coming up. So in this case, I guess we're getting into sort of filtering what you're going to see.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of have an out of the box time frame, so it defaults to 24 hours. But you could kind of override that on a per tile basis, or you can override it at the kind of whole dashboard level as well. So yeah, you could obviously increase that, and you suddenly see a lot more builds and kind of data coming through. And the next steps are kind of similar. So shaping lets you kind of take that data and shape it. Maybe you want to do, you know, a count of builds by status or something like that. So I could group by build run state and say we'll do a count. There's 24 completed builds. Maybe there's a state there that's going to be a bit better. Yeah, so 8 in red, 14 in green, and 2 in kind of warning state. So super easy to kind of take that data, aggregate it, filter it, sort it, whatever you might want to do.
I think interesting to point out there is when you've changed this to something, for example, that's no longer time series data, the line graph is now showing a little warning icon, because there's no way we can draw a line anymore. The bar chart would still work, the donut would still work, but the line graph is no longer available because we've lost those timestamps in the data set.
Yeah. So the visualizations are all kind of aware of the data and kind of what columns they need. So like you say, the line graph needs a timestamp and a number to be able to at least draw a rough line. Whereas the donut in this case, a number and a label, that's enough, and it lights up and off you go.
Nice. So just to throw a little sort of example scenario at you, let's say, for example, I only want to know about the number of failed builds in, let's say, like the last 30 days, or, you know, I guess realistically you'd want, you know, failed builds in the last hour or last 12 hours. But in this case, let's leave it with the time frame as it is. You just want to see like a count, and, you know, like, I'm not going to sit and stare at SquaredUp all day long watching for that number changing. So how can you help me, Dave?
Yeah, so that's probably where monitoring would come in. So yeah, you can build your dashboards, you can publish all the stats to those, but like you say, you're not going to sit and watch that every 60 seconds while it refreshes and new data comes in. But if you come over to monitoring and enable that, you can then set thresholds and various kind of conditions on those tiles. So if I filter this down, let's just say state equals error. So we'll just have the error there. I can say, you know, if this ever goes above 10, I want to generate an error notification. Maybe if this goes above 5, it's just a warning, and so on. So you can start to kind of fine tune those monitoring and thresholds. And we'll switch this maybe just to a scalar visualization. We can add a label there and so on. So if I hit save on that tile will get added to our dashboard, and you can see the color of that monitoring is kind of applied. So straight away we can say, oh yeah, maybe there's a slight issue with builds kind of failing in the last 24 hours, but it's just a warning, and maybe it's not too kind of serious at that point.
It's probably worth sort of mentioning here about our like health roll-up model at this point as well. So you've turned on monitoring on a tile, and you've got the little circle in the top left with the color. That dashboard has gone from having no health state to now having health, right? Where the dashboard has inherited the health state from that tile, as it would from a bunch of tiles on the dashboard. If they're all green and one goes red, we're going to roll up that dashboard health as red as well. And looking over in the navigation bar on the left, there are a few of those out-of-box dashboards that already have monitors enabled. And because of that, the workspace that you started in, which was just a gray cube, is now colored to represent a rolled up health state.
Yes, and that's really one of the kind of unique parts of SquaredUp is, build out your dashboards, but as you're doing that, kind of building your monitoring and thresholds, and effectively you're building out a kind of modeled system where you have maybe a workspace for each of your applications, and they're changing color based on those thresholds, based on those monitors within them. So you can say, application 1 is red because there's some threshold here that's tripped over the max limit, and so on. Yeah.
So I guess for anybody who watches this who sort of knows SquaredUp's history of like, hang on a minute, that sounds just like SCOM. Well, you're probably right there. We've probably been inspired by lots of experience of the power of a really solid health roll-up model, and bringing that into dashboarding on top of any data, I think is, like you said, it's incredibly powerful, and it's definitely unique amongst other sort of dashboarding tools that you might be looking at.
Yeah. I like to say we've taken all the best bits of SCOM, inspired by some of those, and left all the worst bits behind. Hopefully a much easier UI and lots of other cool bits you can use as well.
There was one other little option I noticed in the tile designer there that we didn't click into, and we probably don't need to go into it in a huge amount of depth here, but there's a little switcher up in the top right for SQL Analytics. What's the story?
Good spot. So SQL Analytics is a feature that lets you take data from the tile and run some SQL against it. So we let you do that because SQL is a pretty common language, lots of people know it, and it's really powerful for kind of manipulating, transforming data. So as I showed on that shaping tab, we've got some basic options for filtering and sorting and grouping. But if you want to do something a bit more complicated, you can do that with SQL. And one of the other cool pieces is it also lets you aggregate across multiple data sets. So a data set is this kind of combination of data stream and objects. So one great example in the world of kind of CI/CD is perhaps you've actually got multiple CI/CD tools. So maybe it's Azure DevOps and Circle CI, and you want to aggregate those two data sets and kind of bring them together for a total count of failures across them or average build time across them. So we can have one data set up for ADO, one data set up for Circle CI, and then simply just use the SQL to query that. So we can do a quick example. I think let's do something like build duration. I'll just pick that same pipeline. If you get some stats coming back there. So yeah, I can see a whole bunch of build durations for those recent builds. I can then come into SQL and in full Blue Peter style paste in my query. And that Blue Peter reference doesn't make sense if you're not from the UK, but there we go. Do the average of run durations. That's in seconds divided by 60 to get minutes, and then round that up. So you can use all the typical kind of SQL commands and utilities. And then we'll hit execute on that, and we can see, yeah, there you go, 47 minutes, the average run duration. So super easy just to kind of manipulate that data if you've got something that maybe the UI can't do, or like I say, from multiple data sets as well.
And I'd assume that little picker up in the top right corner there for add data set basically lets you effectively build another tile within this one, and like following the same steps of data stream, scope, get your data. But you've now got data set 2, which you can then reference in your SQL. So simple case might just be a union between, a column from data set 1 and a column from data set 2, but equally you might be aggregating things, or maybe getting the current exchange rate for some currencies from one source and using it to convert all your cloud costs from yen into dollars, or, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's some good use cases as well for kind of time frame comparison. So maybe one data set is 24 hours and the other data set's 30 days, and you can compare those two time ranges to say, oh yeah, why is the average duration kind of spiking at this point versus the benchmark, let's say, for the 30-day period. So
nice.
Yeah, lets you do some super cool stuff. And of course, you can then apply the monitoring and other bits and pieces on top of that. So that average duration I just calculated, now we can set a monitor on that and be alerted, when it goes over threshold and so on.
Great. Okay, nice. So we've built a dashboard, we've turned on some monitoring. I guess notifications is probably worth just looking at quickly. What are the options for sort of telling us that something's changed, not just sort of seeing that status in a dashboard?
Yeah, let's do that. So over on the left here, we've got our monitors tab, and that will give us a summary of all the monitors within a workspace. So you can see those ones on the kind of out of the box dashboards, and then that new one that I've just added. So we can see it's currently, in warning, and it's telling me, yeah, 8 is over the threshold of 5 and so on. So that's your kind of summary of your monitors, but really you want to get notified when those change, and that's where notification rules comes in. So I'll select add notification rule, and you can see we've got a bunch of different destinations there. So email, obviously, just get emailed whenever it triggers. We can use stuff like ServiceNow to actually create incidents and close incidents when those monitors return healthy, or maybe you just want to be notified in Slack or Teams and so on. Zapier is a great one. Obviously, Zapier has a billion other tools that you can then send that alert to or process it in a certain way. So pretty powerful there. And then custom just lets you send a JSON webhook anywhere you want. So maybe there's a tool not mentioned in this list or not supported by Zapier, whatever it might be. You can just send those custom webhooks around.
Nice. And there's a bit of granularity behind that picker at the top as well. So maybe you just want to be told when, one thing changes out of the dozen or so you might have configured. Maybe it's tell team A when this dashboard goes red, tell team B when this one goes red.
Yeah, exactly. So I could say selected monitors here and just turn on that new monitor I created, and that will just then notify whenever that changes. So yeah, error warning, success, unknown, whatever it might be.
Cool. Okay. I think the last thing that'd be worth just sort of sharing in this context for a sort of new user on their first day would be, how do you make use of those 3 seats that you get for free on our free tier? A great example, and this happens quite a lot, is you want to add a certain plugin, let's say Azure, and it's going to be single sign-on, but you don't have rights to do that yourself. So you need to invite your friendly Azure admin into your tenant so they can add the plugin for you. Quite often we'll find people will just, the Azure admin will follow a link, they'll sign up, they'll end up in their own sort of fresh tenant as a new user. We are working to improve that process a little bit. But for now, what's the step to sort of invite somebody to work with you in this organization?
Yeah, so a couple of ways to do it. If say it's that use case, you want to invite someone in and they need to be able to kind of administer SquaredUp. It's easiest to kind of do that from the settings page. So a whole bunch of obviously different settings here, but users and groups is where you need to go. And then you can come in and add a user. So enter their email address, put them in the administrators group if that's what they need, or you can kind of fine tune those groups and permissions as well. So that's great if you're inviting kind of someone to the full platform. Perhaps you just want to invite them to a particular workspace. You can share the dashboard up here, and there'll be a shortcut to kind of manage members. So you can directly manage members of this particular workspace. So I can go through and say, yeah, let's add Joe in here, and off you go. Again, enter their email address and they'll get invited automatically.
Great. Okay. I think there are some more advanced features that we're going to be covering in depth for the rest of this series. So let's maybe leave the first user demo sort of there for today. So thank you very much for saving my bacon there when I logged in and found that I actually already have a tenant. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of bring up, just as a sort of a wrap up, just these resources here. So Dave, you mentioned our changelog that's available through feedback.squaredup.com.
Yeah.
That's a great place to go if you want to request a plugin or you've got some ideas to share. Community Answers is also really worth checking out if you have questions broadly about monitoring, about the tools you might be connecting to, or you just want to hear about, maybe you've just got something to troubleshoot in SquaredUp. But otherwise, yeah, if you want to get in touch, you want to join an episode, you've got a topic you'd like us to cover, SQUPCAST@squaredup.com is where you want to go. So yeah, we'll leave it there for today. So thank you very much, Dave. Really appreciate you joining us, and again for saving my demo bacon at the start of this episode. Always happens.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
See you later, folks.